I'm Dr. Mary Manjikian, and I thought it would be fun this morning to take apart the phrase the irregular informal diplomacy. As you know, that's a phrase that Ambassador William Taylor has used in these impeachment hearings, talking about some of the ways in which presidential envoys like Rudy Giuliani have in his opinion, interfered in both U.S. foreign policy and Ukrainian domestic politics. What exactly is an informal diplomat? What exactly is an irregular channel? Well, I'm kind of an expert in intelligence and national security, so I thought I'd share with you a little bit about these phrases today. The notion of informal diplomacy is one that you often encounter when you're hearing about something like somebody like Jesse Jackson, Reverend Jesse Jackson, somebody like Reverend Billy Graham being asked to go to somewhere like North Korea yeah, that's my dog, to go to someplace like North Korea to negotiate for the release of perhaps an American hostage. So informal diplomacy could be used in a situation where we didn't have formal domestic relations, international relation, a formal relationship with a foreign nation. In that case, informal diplomacy is neither legal nor illegal. It kind of falls into kind of a gray area. It's kind of quasi-legal. It's a way of the United States interfacing with countries where it doesn't have formal diplomatic relations. We then begin to talk about something called maybe the back channel. We hear about that sometimes in foreign policy, and we can begin to talk about irregular channels as well. Formal diplomatic relations between nations are very formalized and they're very hierarchical. You have to be officially recognized as a diplomat. Your credentials get handed in to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. You are given diplomatic license plates sometimes. You're given a diplomatic ID card perhaps. And you have a formal right to be in the country speaking on behalf of the nation that you are representing. When we think about irregular channels, however, we might be thinking about something like covert activity, a situation where maybe we place a CIA agent in a country and we don't tell the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, or perhaps we pass them off as a legitimate diplomat. Covert activity often falls into kind of a legal gray area. Every country does it. We know every country does it. No, it's not legal, but we tend to look the other way. However, when we think about irregular channels and covert activity, those of us who are old will immediately think of a fellow named Oliver North, who acted on behalf of President Reagan all the way back in the 1980s. And what he did, he actually did go to jail for. His activities internationally were seen as violating international law, the laws of the countries that he was operating in, and he was also accused of violating U.S. domestic law. He was a member of the National Security Council. He was a U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel. And basically, there was a law passed called the Boland Amendment, which said that U.S. funds could not be used to back a group called the Contras, who were in Nicaragua attempting to overthrow the government of Nicaragua. The government of Nicaragua was a group of people called the Sandinistas, who were considered by many people to be kind of communist, socialists, and so there were sort of conservative people in Washington who wanted to remove them. However, because there was no NSC finding authorizing North to engage in the activities, he was described as having gone rogue. And what he did was he came up with a kind of complex money laundering operation in order to fund the Iran-Contras. He had arms that the U.S. sold to Israel, which then resold them to Iran and gave the money back to the United States, and it was then funneled to the Contras. And Oliver North did go to jail. So when I think about Rudy Giuliani, the question I think it's interesting to ask is, was he more like RFK, who sometimes did things for JFK? RFK was an unofficial diplomat who spoke with Soviets during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and some people actually say he's responsible for helping to resolve the Cuban Missile Crisis. Or was he more like Oliver North? Was he basically kind of a helper in the background, kind of behind the scenes, doing a little back channel diplomacy? Or was he someone who might go to jail for doing something illegal? I think it's an interesting way to ask the question. I would say that RFK, even when he was negotiating the Cuban Missile Crisis, he was still acting on behalf of the United States. He was not acting in disregard of stated U.S. policy, and he was acting for the good of the nation. And so I think that's the distinction that, as you saw, diplomat William Taylor made yesterday. He said that not only was it an irregular channel which contravened specific U.S. policy, but that Giuliani also was not representing the United States. He was representing the president. So in some ways, he's a little more like Oliver North than he is like RFK. I don't know if this has been helpful. Hopefully it has. If you take a course with me, you'll get more of this. So looking forward to meeting all of you. Thanks. Bye.